My Little Pony Equestria Girls is the most disappointing thing since G1. I mean, how much more could you fuck up the entire underlying thematic message to My Little Pony? And while My Little Pony Tales and its eerily cynical theming and general mediocrity can be excused as a relic of an earlier age that lacked the ethical and artistic integrity of the modern incarnation of the franchise, the unfortunate reality is that Equestria Girls has no such excuse, and consequently, it will be a stain on the purity of the series. Forever. It will never go away. It can never be undone. If you're someone who's under the age of 15 and says their least favorite episode of MLP is suited for success because it's the most girliest one, then I suggest you shut this critique off right now before I carefully explain how much of a fucking idiot you are. So where do I possibly start? Nothing in Equestria Girls makes any sense at all. It comes off like the script was written by some corporate schlock for the sole purpose of selling dolls to 8-year-olds. It was like McCarthy penned the script in one draft, turned it into Hasbro, and they decided to go with it, without anyone saying that it made no sense at all and was a stupid, incoherent mess. I guess at this point, who's gonna question Hasbro though, or tell them what to do? They control every aspect of the franchise. It probably drove away everyone who would question their creative intent a long time ago. I also think that the Hasbro execs only really focused on the fact that a new My Little Pony IP would sell a lot of dolls to little girls, regardless of what the plot was. I mean really, how hard could it be, right? It's like fucking up the Transformers. You get the robots, make them punch each other in the face, and... Number 1, the setting. The biggest and most glaring problem with Equestria Girls is the setting. A lot of people seem to be confusing this concept with the premise, so it looks like I gotta explain this a bit more in depth. The premise of Equestria Girls isn't all that problematic. In fact, it's actually pretty good. Celestia's previous protege, who has fallen from grace, returns to steal an ancient artifact and hoard its power to rule over an alternate dimension. That sounds like a pretty solid premise for a fantasy film, and right in line with the established tropes that the lore of MLP has been using to establish its world building. The problems begin to arise when we find out what this alternate reality consists of. Instead of being a twisted version of Equestria proper that somehow is better suited to the desires of Sunset Shimmer, we instead get the sets from Canterlot High, the most two-dimensional, stereotypical high school in the history of modern animation. And therein lies the crux of the issue. The fact that it's high school alone isn't enough to damn this concept. There are plenty examples of shows that use high school as a backdrop that can still be incredibly interesting. Watamote is a great recent example of examining the high school experience in a unique, interesting fashion, even having the protagonist be a socially awkward fish-out-of-water archetype like Twilight is portrayed as in this film. The problem with Canterlot High is that it's the same high school we've seen hundreds of times in every other cut-and-paste high school TV drama. Nothing about Canterlot High as a setting attempts to break the established trope or subvert cliched concepts, and as a result, this setting feels incredibly cardboard and fake, and actively works against immersing the viewer in its reality. Remember, the entire point of the G4 incarnation of the My Little Pony show from a creative angle since its inception was subversion. Lord wanted to create a show that rose above the tropes of its peers, and create something with substance. And most of the show does this at every turn, from its characterizations to conflict presentations and resolutions. The setting of Canterlot High, and thus Equestria Girls as a film, fails to carry on this lineage, and instead retreads the same base presentations of high school we've all seen, and as a result, the entire backdrop of the film comes off as artificial and lifeless. It's a real shame too, because this could have actually been a really interesting opportunity to provide a bit of social commentary on the perceptions of high school, or even the modern public school system as a whole. Think about it. Twilight comes from a world that places a huge emphasis on individuality and self-discovery. Your entire childhood in Equestria is focused solely on figuring out that one special talent that most accurately defines you, and then your adulthood consists of cultivating it and sharing it with the world. Conversely, the public school system in the real world strips away that individuality and promotes an unyielding standardized curriculum for everyone, regardless of personal strengths and weaknesses. Your talents and abilities are meaningless if they cannot operate within the pre-existing mechanism, and high school is a preparation for fitting into a predetermined role as opposed to individual expression. It would have been really interesting to see Twilight, at least in passing, comment on this diametrically opposed system. A bit beyond the scope of the target demographic, you say? Perhaps, but the show has subtly alluded to some rather heady concepts in the past, so even a small reference would have been really interesting. It just seems like a missed opportunity. Speaking of missed opportunities, it's also a bit disappointing that despite being in a completely different reality than the one MLP usually operates in, we only ever really get to see one location. Canterlot High. Sure, there's that montage at the end when they all go shopping, and that one scene when they all get drinks and talk about stuff. But other than that, the entire story seems to take place at the school, with Twilight even sleeping in the school library. Somehow. I know that at that point she had no friends, and having Twilight out on the streets would have been awkward. But why couldn't they have retooled the series of events and have Twilight sleep over with her friends? Perhaps Applejack and Rarity, and have a callback to look before her sleep, make some Slumber 101 jokes. I mean, this film is all about referencing events from the series, and this seemed like a perfect opportunity. On top of that, this could have given the viewer some more character development and helped flesh out the world of Equestria Girls to feel more like a three-dimensional place, and not just a typical backdrop for teenage melodrama. As it stands, the lack of variety and location in Equestria Girls feels off. It'd be like if all of MLP just took place in Sugar Cube Corner. Part of what makes My Little Pony so great is the fleshed out nature of the world it takes place in. It feels dynamic and alive. It should have been even easier to make that work in Equestria Girls because it's supposed to be our reality. Put these characters in situations and locations that are similar to everyday life and normal occurrences in our world, and then play their personalities off of it. This is really the only time we'll ever get to see that happen. But other than that one internet scene with the Cutie Mark Crusaders, this film largely squanders this opportunity. But regardless, after an admittedly well done intro scene that doesn't take place in high school, Twilight is whisked away into the setting on a mission. The stakes have never been higher. Celestia's ex-protege has stolen the most powerful artifact in all of Equestria, and thus has rendered the Crown's last line of defense completely inert. But that's okay, because this is Twilight Sparkle we're talking about. A character ruled by logic and level-headedness, with a proven track record for being mission-focused, able to get tasks done for Celestia all the time. Add to the fact that she has an insultingly high expectation for herself when it comes to pleasing Celestia, and I'm sure she'll get the crown back in no time. Right? Number 2, the characters. So Twilight goes through the portal and is spit out in front of Canterlot High, the school with a now illogical fascination with horse puns. Twilight, now a human with an interesting fashion sense, is understandably freaked out over her new bipedal body, as well as her dragon compatriot getting a massive downgrade to your average mutt. The two venture forth to begin their quest, and Twilight has a bit of trouble getting used to her new body, and a series of hijinks ensues. She walks on all fours like she normally would as a pony, she slams into a door after trying and failing to open it with magic, opens another door with her head, eats food by putting her face in it, and signs her name with a pen in her mouth. If you find yourself getting annoyed or bored with these gags after like the first two, then pat yourself on the back because you have a pulse. The reason these scenes become problematic are that Twilight as a character isn't as dense. Let's review for a moment, shall we? Twilight should not be this confused as to the concept of hands. For one thing, she lives with Spike, who, strangely enough, actually has hands. Hell, he's her personal scribe, so she's more than familiar with the concept of using forelimbs to write. On top of that, we've seen tons of the ponies, even Twilight herself manipulating objects with their forehooves before. This concept isn't completely alien to equestrian society, and the fact that they keep milking this gag long after it's time to move on just gets grating really fast, and makes Twi come off as far more idiotic than she has any right to. But whatever, this is just a movie for babies, and babies are stupid, but they buy the dolls, so who cares? So Twilight eventually makes her way inside the school and is at a loss concerning this new foreign society, and sings a quick song in her head explaining this fact to us. She then literally runs into some guy named Flash Sentry. You would think, since I know that this character has a name, that he would be important to the story. You would be wrong. Anyways, the two barely say hi to each other before Twilight is on her way, when she figuratively runs into this universe's counterpart to Fluttershy, while getting into a fight with the now humanized Sunset Shimmer, who, unsurprisingly, is the typical stuck-up bitch cliche that populates every high school drama ever made. She is apparently also just as intelligent as her archetype would suggest, as while Twilight recognizes her, Sunset, despite being a part of the student body for a while now, knowing that the portal is not yet closed, and can probably safely assume assume that the element of harmony wouldn't give up without a fight, fails to put together the fact that the student she's never seen in school before today with an identical color scheme to the pony she just robbed is probably Twilight Sparkle. The two have some words before Sunset takes off, leaving Twilight to introduce herself to Fluttershy in a scene that harkens back to the Season 1 opener. When asked if she has seen Twilight's crown, human Fluttershy responds that she was able to get the crown away from Sunset, who gave it to Principal Celestia. Yes, Principal Celestia. You gotta love how the immortal demigods of Equestria are regulated here to high school faculty and their kingdom a small state-funded learning institution. Way to ruin the grandeur of your fantasy setting, DHX. Wait a minute. We never get to see a humanized version of Mayor Mare in this world, do we? Is she actually the mayor? Does Mayor Mare outrank Celestia in the human world? Anyways, Celestia tells Twilight that in order to get the crown, she has to enter and win the fall formal. Twilight, remembering that she is under a strict time limit and has no room for distractions, as well as understanding the importance of recovering her element of harmony, explains to Celestia that the crown she has in her possession isn't the one used for the formal, but belongs to her, and politely asks to have it returned. Wait a minute. That doesn't happen. Why doesn't that happen? No, I'm serious. Why doesn't this happen? One of the cornerstones of Twilight's character is social awkwardness and nonconformity. We see this all the time in the series. When you bust into your brother's own wedding rehearsal and declare his bride to be evil, guess what? You don't give a crap about proper social proceedings. Twilight has been shown to take action for the sake of what she believes to be the greater good, for better or for worse. She interrupts a summer sun celebration to confront Nightmare Moon. She crashes Shining Armor's wedding with the real Cadence. Hell, she puts half of Ponyville under a spell to try and not disappoint her teacher. Based on her track record, there is no reason for her not to go to Principal Celestia, the alter ego of her lifelong teacher, and attempt to reason with her. I can forgive the fact that Twilight never attempts to just take the crown back, simply because she's an ethically strong character and it'd be out of her archetype to do so, even though it's not technically stealing. But Twilight just accepts that now she has to win this competition in a world she isn't familiar with, instead of even attempting to ask for her crown back, property that is rightfully hers. Even Spike brings up this point in the movie.
Just tell her the crown was yours and ask for it back.
Oh, I was going to. But imagine if one of them showed up in Equestria saying they came from a place filled with tall, fleshy, two-legged creatures with these. We'd think they were crazy.
You make a good point.
By good point, I'm assuming you mean terrible point that proves nothing. Because, despite his quick dismissal of one of the few logical lines uttered in this film, for the rest of the movie, it's Spike who keeps trying to convince Twilight to explain to the others what's really going on. And that very explanation is what goes on to eventually solve the entire conflict of the movie. You can't dissuade a logical action with a contrived excuse, only to later turn around and use the exact same logical action to resolve your conflict. Oh, but the conflict wasn't about logic though, right? It was about fear. Twilight hesitated coming clean to her humanized friends because she was afraid of being rejected by them. And the theme at the end of this movie is to not to be afraid and trust your friends. Well, that's all fine and good, but the problem with that is that this early into the film, Twilight hasn't even made any connections with anyone in Canterlot High. She bumped into Fluttershy for only a few seconds, and she still hasn't even been introduced to the rest of the remaining 5. She has no reason to fear rejection from anyone in this world at this point. Her concerns and priorities at the present time should still remain solely with the well-being of her true home and her true friends. But then this movie would end right here. We can't have that. We still have dolls to sell. Continued in part 2. Stupidity seems to be a theme that permeates throughout all the characterization in Equestria Girls. The entire cast we're familiar with are all here in essence, but the script seems to perform a lobotomy on them that drops their IQ a few points for the sake of contrivance. And the new characters on display are even worse. Regardless, Twilight seems to stick around with Fluttershy, happy to have found a seemingly familiar face. Staying with her throughout the day, she begins to get more acclimated with a new body and a new environment. And it's during this time that we meet the humanized versions of the remaining 5 in a series of events that continue to play off the initial introductions of them in the Nightmare Moon arc, albeit with a twist in an effort to show that these are the same characters in spirit as Twilight's friends. And this brings us to the remaining 5 themselves, who are all completely inept for an equally inept, pointless reason. So, in the world of Canterlot High, none of the remaining 5 are friends. In fact, we're shown that all the human counterparts, the elements of harmony, actually really hate each other. Twilight just kinda lets us slide for a while, unsure of what exactly is going on, and we're left to ponder as to why this is the case, and Twilight continues to be met with tension as the human counterparts of her friends interact. Eventually, it's revealed that all Twilight's friends used to be friendly with each other, but suddenly all simultaneously got mad at one another over a series of trite, shallow conflicts spurred into motion by Sunset Shimmer, unbeknownst to all of them. The leaps and subsequent lack of logic is so multi-layered here that we're going to have to take a moment to wade through all of it. Number 1. Why does Twilight automatically assume that Sunset Shimmer is the one who sabotaged their main five's friendship? There's no evidence to support that Sunset was the one responsible for breaking up the main five. Sure, once Pinky starts letting everyone else know that someone has been impersonating her and sending out false texts and emails, it becomes a logical possibility. But even before this comes to light, Twilight somehow already knows that her friends have all been duped, simply because she saw a picture of all them being friendly with each other as kids. What's going on here, Twilight? Did you look at the script? Number 2. Why do all the main five automatically believe Twilight's baseless assumptions? Sir, Sunset is characterized as a general bully, but that's just the thing. We're never given or shown any clues that Sunset has a specific vendetta against these characters. She's just generally unpleasant to everyone. Why would she go this far out of her way to sabotage these characters' relationship with each other? Other than that she's the bad guy of the movie, and that's what bad guys do. The funniest thing is that there's no evidence ever presented in this scene. They all just kinda sign off on Twilight's assumption and operate based upon it, and the movie trusts the viewer to do the same. Number 3. Why are all the remaining five terrible friends? Even if we can dismiss the weak context of Sunset's actions, it doesn't excuse the fact that all the remaining five did the most idiotic, illogical thing possible in response to these actions. They all just simply stopped associating with each other overnight. Normal people don't operate like this, and given that Twilight calls upon their long-standing friendship in an attempt to reunite them, just further proves how contrived this conflict is. You aren't going to sever ties with long-standing friends over one simple miscommunication. Even Twilight points this out to AJ that she could have just texted Rainbow Dash. How she has already come to grips with the concept of cell phones, what took all day to figure out hands is beyond me, but I digress. To which Applejack just kinda sheepishly shrugs off. Even worse, Twilight makes it very clear that all these characters are friends with each other, but each of them only had a beef with one other character. Why did all the remaining five stop associating with all of each other over a conflict that only affected their relationship with one other person? So you're telling me that none of them talked to each other trying to figure out what happened with the one friend they had a problem with? No one called their other friends to vent or even complain about this on Facebook? How are we supposed to buy that? None of these characters act in a way that a human being with a functioning brain would, essentially allowing this whole contrived conflict to occur due to their own incompetence. Their equine counterparts are supposed to be representing have time and time again shown that they're all intelligent, respectable characters in their own right, and since the show is all about friendship, have proven to take the correct actions when it comes to dealing with friendship problems. So how am I supposed to be okay with such a forced scenario? Number 4. Why is this even in the fucking movie? So what does this scene accomplish? What does having Twilight reunite her friends do for the overarching narrative? Absolutely nothing. In fact, this entire plotline is completely pointless and adds nothing to the film. The fact that the remaining five aren't friends, but immediately became friends right after we're told why, makes this entire conflict completely without purpose. If friendship exists everywhere and is the most powerful magic of all, as this movie eventually states, then why did it take an Equestrian resident to rekindle a friendship that, for all intents and purposes, was dead? Doesn't this plotline actually hurt the platitudes this film is spouting? The only obvious motive would be to paint Sunset Shimmer as a villain, but by this point we're more than well aware of this fact. Twilight's friends could have all been together from the get-go and have taken Twilight into their fold after seeing her being read the riot act from Sunset, and none of the events of this film would have been hurt. His plotline literally does nothing but eat up running time requisite to get this movie to feature length. The only other possible reason that this plot point seems to occur at all is because the writers wanted to have an inverse relationship between the events of Equestria Girls and the Nightmare Moon arc, wherein Twilight goes out of her way to make friends in spite of Spike, whereas in the Nightmare Moon arc, Spike convinces her to make friends in spite of her own single-mindedness.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme, Every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
Now where have I seen that clip before? This also brings up a question concerning Sunset Shimmer. Why would she even bother breaking up the remaining 5 in the first place? Oh, because they represent the elements of harmony and can stand against her? But it doesn't even make any sense, because if the portal only opens once every 30 moons, then Sunset has no way of knowing who the element bearers even are. If that's the case, then she has no reason to be messing with a seemingly normal group of friends, since it's obvious that Sunset only cares about getting Twilight's crown, and that her plans are centered in Equestria, not Canterlot High, so she has no reason to bother messing with anyone there. I mean, yeah, she's a bully, but the fact that she just happens to mess with the one group of friends that could oppose her, again, it's just stretching things for the sake of convenience. This also brings up a ton of other facts concerning Sunset Shimmer and her lack of logic in relationship to the plot. I could just gloss over these points, but hey, where's the fun in that? This is gonna get pretty multi-layered, so stick with me for a second. The whole conflict of the movie starts with Sunset Shimmer stealing Twilight's crown. We're then told that Sunset escaped to the world of Canterlot High, and that the portal only opens once every 30 moons. So by that logic, Sunset should have just returned to Equestria at the start of this movie. After all, the film gives us no reason to believe anything else, so to assume otherwise would be baseless speculation. So, inferring that to be the case, how does Sunset know that Twilight is a princess? Twilight is barely comfortable with the notion, so this movie must take place almost immediately after the events of Magical Mystery Cure, in which case, Sunset shouldn't have even been around to know of Twilight's ascension. However, let's put that aside and just assume that she found out somehow. Maybe she got back the day before and snuck around and figured everything out. There's another interesting question that this movie's logic poses. What was Sunset Shimmer's original plan? Let's recall some facts, my lovelies. Even if we give Sunset the benefit of the doubt of doing some recon before making a move on Twilight, there are still some things that don't add up. The Crystal Empire has been missing since Sombra was defeated 1,000 years ago, and no one knew about it, including the ever-studious Twilight Sparkle. Even Celestia missed it, not knowing much about it, so Sunset is in a location that's completely alien to her. On top of that, she's targeting an element of harmony, a weapon that she should not even know is returned. As far as Sunset should have been aware, the elements were still stone in the Everfree Forest. Even more, she targets Twilight's element specifically, the element of magic, the only element that was lost to time and remained unidentified. Remember, even Twilight, Celestia's current student, who logically should be just as much in the know as Sunset, if not more so, was actively researching the elements at the beginning of the show and had no idea what the 6th element was, stating that it was a complete mystery, and remained oblivious as to its identity until she unlocked it during her confrontation with Nightmare Moon. So the odds of Sunset knowing about it are slim at best. And yet, Sunset's entire plan for taking over Equestria revolves around infiltrating a location she knows nothing about to steal a weapon she shouldn't know exists from a princess she shouldn't be aware of. Even if we wanted to make the insultingly vapid logical leap that she came up with the entire scheme on the fly once returning, it still doesn't change the fact that there was no way she could have known about any of these happenings while in the world of Canterlot High. So the question remains, what was her original goal that brought her back through the portal in the first place? It seems that she lacks any motivation to return unless it was to enact this plan. A plan that was impossible to formulate without knowing about things beyond the scope of her perception. And, perhaps even more importantly, while we can forgive Twilight for refusing to just steal the crown back, we really can't say the same for Sunset, because she's the villain and obviously doesn't have any moral qualms. This is a high school, so I'm doubting the security is very tight. In fact, it can't be all that complex, as Sunset must have broken in to get the regular crown used for the event to steal with Twilight's element in the beginning of the film. So, if she had no qualms with stealing the regular crown from the school, why doesn't she just steal Twilight's crown after it's given to Celestia? Why does Sunset go through so much trouble to attempt to frame Twilight in the hopes that maybe she'll win the fall formal and get the crown, as opposed to simply stealing it from Principal Celestia and getting her show on the road? Having Sunset play along makes absolutely no sense. But that's okay, because she'll make a pretty doll. I'm sure all the babies will love it. Continued in part 3. Number 3. The conflicts. So the whole central conflict of this film is Twilight needs to get her crown back, and Sunset Shimmer wants it for reasons. She laughs at Twilight for not knowing what it is an element of harmony does in another world, but she ends up laughing at the entire audience too, because the movie doesn't clue us in either until the last 5 minutes. Of course, I'm also laughing at Sunset because, by all accounts, there's no reason she should know what an element does either based on what we just discussed. We really can't talk about the conflicts of this film, though, without again dissecting the one perpetuating them in the first place. Sunset Shimmer was just an incredibly weak villain. It's hard to laud a villain whose most direct action against Twilight was putting up an embarrassing video of her on YouTube. Oh no, what a nightmare. These people that I've never met before and will never see again in a week's time all think I'm a freak. It's a shame that I've always been shown to be so susceptible to social pressure and conform to social standards in my own world. If only I was some sort of social recluse and stayed in the library all day reading books or something, was used to being called names like Egghead and realized that such vapid perceptions aren't worth worrying about. Oh wait. See, the problem is we have two characters who are essentially archmages and students of a demigod, one of whom who has ascended to essentially godhood herself, fighting over possession of a magical artifact that grants unlimited power, and their conflict revolves around high school drama. These characters, even in the isolated context of the film's limited exposition, are beyond the scope of these tired tropes. The viewer can't take this conflict seriously because the stakes were initially presented as so high, then subsequently deflated under base name-shaming and embarrassing photographs. Oh wait, we haven't gotten to the photographs yet. Hold on a second. So Twilight has successfully reunited her friends, but now they face a new challenge. Everyone thinks she is a freak based on the YouTube video posted by Sunset. And since this movie freely admits that the fall formula is nothing but a glorified popularity contest, no one will vote for Twilight with such a tarnished image. With only one day until the formal, the girls have to think fast in order to come up with a plan to save Twilight's reputation so she can bring the crown home. The girls go to the Sunday bar, one of the few scenes in this film that doesn't take place at school, to brainstorm ideas. While ordering a milkshake, Twilight again literally runs into Flash Sentry.
We've got to stop bumping into each other like this.
Yeah, you really do. Twilight rejoins her friends all flustered at the sight of her forced love interest, and her expression catches the eye of Rarity. Then the dumbest line in the movie is said.
You're already trying to get a crown. Who knows what Sunset Shimmer would do if you ended up getting her ex-boyfriend, too?
Why was this needed? I said, why was this needed, movie? This line serves literally zero purpose in the context of not just this scene, but the entire film. This fact is never referenced again. Sunset's character is in no way impacted by having a relationship with Flash, and since Twilight never properly hooks up with Flash Sentry, this revelation doesn't affect their relationship either. The line literally serves no purpose other than to check off the evil bitch has an ex-boyfriend interested in the protagonist box on the list of cliches this movie contents itself with the side effect of further weakening Sunset as a villain. Why would she bother getting involved with someone in the world of Canterlot High if her plan is to take over Equestria? Again, Archmage trying to hoard an artifact to rule an ancient kingdom. Ambitions are beyond succumbing to high school tropes. Now, maybe at this point you're thinking, what if the fact that Sunset had feelings for Flash despite being here to acquire power speaks to her innate humanity, and that she isn't a two-dimensional antagonist but actually has more depth to her? Well, I would love that too. But if the movie was actually trying to say that, why not actually do something with that? Again, the movie never capitalizes on what little potential this insinuation has. The statement just hangs there in complete isolation for no discernible reason at all. So the girls have a quick chat attempting to think of a way to put Twilight back in the school's good graces, when Rarity comes up with the perfect plan. Have the six wear pony ears and tails, like the school's mascot, and dance in the middle of the cafeteria as a symbol of unity. They then proceed to do just that in a 2-minute and change song and dance number that is considered by many to be the highlight of this film. No. Look, I love the songs of Friendship is Magic. I really do. But part of the reason the spontaneous song and dance routines work for me in Friendship is Magic is that Equestria is a different world than ours, so the sudden songs aren't all that jarring. They're just part of the world to me at this point. But the fact that this is our world, and that the motivation for this act is to gain respect from the student body just kills this scene for me. I mean, Come on, no high school class would ever do anything but mock students who did this. This action completely undermines the goals that the character set out to achieve, and the fact that it actually does end up working only strengthens the blow. To me, this is the moment the film officially jumps the shark. It has descended into a realm of ridiculousness to which there is no return, and now it is broken. Twilight is on a mission to save her entire kingdom from annihilation, and she is dancing on a cafeteria table. Now, I'm sure at this point, a lot of you will probably jump in and say that this isn't a logical gripe with the film because Equestria Girls is a musical, and to go in not expecting songs to move the plot along would be stupid. But it's not a musical. Not really. A traditional musical has its songs interwoven into the narrative, and the world that it takes place in and the characters that inhabit it integrate these musical numbers into their standard interactions, so that the songs become a part of their normal everyday motions. Equestria Girls doesn't do this. Each song in the film that comes before the cafeteria scene and each one that comes after it is just a backing track to a montage. These songs don't break into the ongoings of the film. They're just there for audible fluff. The only time the film attempts to go the traditional musical route is with this one scene alone, and that isolation further compounds the cafeteria song's jarring presence. You cannot sign off on accepting the scene under the logic of a musical, because this film never establishes itself as one beforehand, and never attempts to do so again once the scene is done. So the next day rolls around, and now everyone in school is wearing wonder-called ears and tails, unified by school spirit. It seems that Twilight has this whole win the crown thing in the bag, until Sunset Shimmer shows up, wearing not wonder-called ears, but a devious smirk. She reports to Vice Principal Luna, oh my god! Luna, what happened to you? What's wrong with your face? She reports to Vice Principal Luna that the decorations in the gym have been wrecked, and that's all Twilight's fault. Photographic evidence to prove it. What's wrong with your face? Luna calls Twilight into her office and informs her that, in light of these circumstances, she is no longer eligible to compete in the fall formal. Why she doesn't comment on why Twilight isn't a legitimate student in the school, though, is beyond me. Things seem hopeless when suddenly Flash Sentry bombs in and brings evidence that proves the photos of Twilight were doctored. Luna looks over them and decides to let Twilight off the hook, thereby ending this conflict. Wait a minute. How long did this scene last? 75 seconds? So you introduce a damning conflict to your main character, and then turn around and immediately resolve it in 75 seconds?
That's an Academy record.
Why? What was the point of even including this in the movie? Why are you wasting my time like this? What's wrong with your face? And this is the main problem with all the conflicts introduced in this movie. None of them carry any weight because they're all excused as quickly as they're introduced. Let's go back to storytelling 101 for a second, shall we? What is the point of having conflict in a story? Why do we have characters face obstacles in the first place? Well, according to Wikipedia, narrative conflict is an inherent incompatibility between the objectives of two or more characters or forces. Conflicts create tension and interest in a story by adding doubt as to its outcome. This is the concept of tension that needs to be addressed in the context of Equestria Girls. The point of a conflict is to test the protagonist, to pit their desires, motivations, and willpower against an opposing force that, for whatever reason, is preventing them from reaching their goal without incident. If we sympathize and like the protagonist, we hope that they succeed and overcome these obstacles and end up getting what they want. Their victory becomes our victory. This is called closure. We're satisfied that the character we like is satisfied. The problem with Equestria Girls is that none of these conflicts introduced are given any time to build up and generate tension, and as a result, we as viewers are completely disconnected from them. There's no time for the protagonist to get involved in the conflict, so when it's resolved, we don't get any sense of closure because we haven't been given any reason to care. Whether it's Twilight being framed for messing up the gym, or her friends all hating each other. By the time all the cards are revealed and we're clued into what's going on, the event is already over, without giving any of us time to care. The only overarching conflict that stays around for more than a couple minutes is Twilight trying to get her crown back, and that conflict should have been solved in under a minute if Twilight wasn't acting so dense. So anyways, Twilight is relieved to have been cleared of the false accusation and gives Flash Sentry a big hug for saving her. Vice Principal Luna takes her leave, saying that with the damage caused at the gym, the formal will have to be postponed until the following evening, and goes to discuss it with her sister. Flash takes a moment to ask Twilight to the dance, and Twilight seems more than willing to accept, but when she realizes that the dance being postponed will cause her to miss getting her element back before the portal to Equestria closes, she panics and takes off. Gee, Maybe if we had just asked for our crown back in the beginning, we wouldn't be dealing with this time crunch now. Flash takes Twilight's outburst as a no to his proposal and takes off dejected. Now, let's take a moment to talk about Flash Sentry. One has to wonder why he's even included in this movie at all. Other than this one scene, the entirety of Flash's character involves running into Twilight and making her all hot and bothered. That's literally it. I'm going to assume that this conflict was the writer's attempt to make him a relevant presence in the film, but even then, it's just not convincing. Any character could have stumbled in on Sunset and played defense for Twilight. Flash being the one to do it says nothing at all about him as a character. The only minutely interesting fact concerning Flash Sentry is that he used to be going out with Sunset Shimmer, and as was already stated, this fact is never used in any way, shape, or form in this film other than merely being stated. They didn't even use Flash's past relationship with Sunset to make him suspicious of Sunset and then stumble upon her framing Twilight. He just happened to be there. So at this point, I was just gonna make the obvious joke that the only reason Flash is even in this movie is to sell dolls, but then I realized something. There is no Flash Sentry toy. Seriously, I looked on Google, scoured some image boards, I even went to the official Equestria Girls website, but there's no Brad doll anywhere in sight. So even that poor joke of a reason for Flash's existence isn't even legitimate. So what's Flash here to do? He isn't relevant to the plot, doesn't have any merchandise to promote, and probably isn't even all that high on girls' lists of favorite characters. So he's here for nothing. Nothing at all. So Twilight makes her way back to the Remain 5 and freaks out over the fact that she's in all likelihood going to be stuck in Canterlot High for 30 moons. She seems ready to give up, until Spike tells her, again, to be direct and admit with her new friends who she really is, and what's really at stake. Twilight is hesitant, afraid that her friends will reject her for being so different. But after some encouragement from Spike, Twilight finally decides to come clean. She then gets the wind stolen from her sails when Pinkie Pie does what Pinkie Pie does and somehow knows exactly what's going on. The girls take the news as one would expect in the context of this film, which is to say, incredibly well, and they take off to find a way to return the formula to its proper date. We could have told her 30 minutes ago too. Just saying. Continued in part 4. The girls arrive at the gym and realize how much of a mess it is. Twilight is doubtful, but requests the help of everyone in an attempt to clean up the gym in time to hold the formal tonight. The girls agree, and after the requisite all-hands-in shot in a misplaced "yay" from Fluttershy, the girls begin cleaning the gym together over a Disney Channel-sounding montage. The can-do attitude of the girls proves to be infectious, as nearly all the passerbys decide to join in, and soon the bulk of the student body is working together to get the gym back in shape. Twilight not missing an opportunity to yet again bump into Flash Sentry. So the student body is able to get the formal back on for tonight. Successful, everyone leaves and gets ready for the big event. So the girls go back to what I'm going to assume is either Rarity's house or the equivalent of her boutique, and we get our second required montage of the girls getting all dolled up for their big night. They arrive at the formal, by limo no less, and Flash arrives mere moments after in his car. Of course he would have a car. He runs after Twilight and asks to at least get one dance tonight, and Twilight stumbles over her words before apologizing for her earlier outburst and accepting, taking his arm and guiding him inside. The dance seems to go off without a hitch, and Twilight, as expected, is named for a former princess, finally reclaiming her element of harmony. Everything seems to be going perfect when Snips and Snail suddenly show up and grab Spike. Twilight and her friends make chase, and the two lead the girls back to the statue that holds the portal, where Sunset Shimmer lies in wait. She tells Snips and Snails to release Spike now that Twilight has been lured out, then threatens Twilight to give her the crown, otherwise she'll take a sledgehammer to the portal, trapping Twi in the world of Canterlot High forever. In a valiant move, Twilight is ready to give up returning to her world if that means preventing Sunset from getting her crown, saying that, based on what she's seen Sunset do without magic, she isn't sure that this world would survive Sunset if left unattended. Wait, what? What has Sunset Shimmer actually done throughout the last hour that could possibly be a threat to the world at large? She's made a nasty YouTube video, told a few lies, and doctored some photos in the most archaic way possible. None of these can hold a candle to the potential disasters awaiting a magically infused world like Equestria without the elements of harmony to protect it. Sure, Twilight's speech sounds brave, but she's really just being stupid. There's no reason leaving Equestria unguarded is worth keeping Sunset Shimmer at bay based on what we've been just shown. So after that illogical outburst, Sunset finally does what she should have done in the beginning of the film and just takes the crown from Twilight. They play a quick game of keep away to pad the runtime before Sunset finally dons the crown. And then the stupidest thing ever happens. Sunset Shimmer gets the crown, puts it on, and transforms into a succubus demon. What? She then uses her power to turn Snips and Snails into demons as well, then casts a mind control spell on the entire student body. In typical cliched villain fashion, she then monologues her entire plan to Twilight.
Spoiler alert! I was bluffing when I said I was going to destroy the portal. I don't want to rule this pathetic little high school. I want Equestria. And with my own little teenage army behind me, I'm going to get it!
What? So your entire plan was to take over Equestria with teenagers? How does that even begin to make any sense? Anyways, Sunset seems certain of victory, gloating that in a world without magic, she has them, while Twilight doesn't, thus is powerless to stop her. Despite the seemingly hopeless situation, her friends refuse to leave her side, so Sunset decides to just take them all out with one shot. And, all of a sudden... What? What? Okay, hold on, movie, just... No, you cannot fuck up this many times in rapid succession. I can barely keep this shit straight here. Jesus Christ. Let's just back up for a second and start at the beginning. Oh my god. Number 1. Why would Sunset let Spike go? She says to not be a monster, but Twilight doesn't need to know that. She didn't actually have to hurt him. The possibility would have been enough. He was the perfect leverage to get Twilight to do whatever she wanted, and she willingly gives up this advantage. Number 2. Why does Twilight believe that Sunset could destroy the portal with a sledgehammer? Wouldn't it just, like, pass through like any other object? It's not closed yet, right? Because that's, like, the entire point of the movie? Perhaps she was gonna destroy the whole statue that the portal was attached to, but I feel like A, Sunset doesn't seem to have the upper body strength for that, and B, that would take such a long time that Twilight could probably just pass through the portal while she's chipping away at it. Number 3. Why does Twilight's element work alone? The show has always implied that the elements only work as a set. Even Pinkie Pie states in this movie that they only work as a set when she's expositing who Twilight really is. Hence why the 5 are powerless against Nightmare Moon in the pilot until Twilight unlocked the 6th. The elements of harmony are pieces of a singular weapon, not weapons in and of themselves. Number 4. Why does Twilight's element contain corrupted dark magic? It's an element of harmony. Is this the writer's way of trying to insinuate that our world is inherently darker and more cruel than Equestria, and the very presence of such a virgin artifact in our reality instantly tainted it? Normally I'd entertain such a headcanon so rich and twisted social commentary, but the writing is so slapdash in this movie I can't even delude myself enough to roll with it. But let's just say that for whatever reason, fine. Twilight's element can work alone in the human world, and when it does, it harnesses dark magic, hence Sunset's plan. Number 5. Why does Twilight's element give Sunset powers when she puts it on, but doesn't do anything when Twilight wore it? She actually was able to put the crown on while at the dance, and it didn't transform her into a demon form when she was crowned. Number 6. Why can the human main 6 use the Deus Ex Rainbow Cannon without the elements of harmony, especially Twilight? If this is because it's the element of magic and can somehow grant the powers of the remaining 5 elements itself, doesn't this devalue the elements of harmony? Doesn't it make them essentially pointless? If this is the case, then it spits in the face of the remaining 5, as they're no longer necessary, and never were. It's been Twilight powering the elements alone the whole time. And if that's not the case, then the power of the elements is inside the user and not the artifact. But if that's true, then where is Sunset harnessing this dark magic from? If it's coming from Sunset herself, then the entire conflict of the film is called into question, since she never needed the element in the first place to become Demon Shimmer and should have just bombed in from the beginning. But apparently she does need the element, because as soon as it's removed, she reverts back to her human form. Number 7. If Twilight could barely walk around when she passed through the portal to the human world, how does Sunset expect to use an army of high school zombies effectively if they're going to be literally stumbling out of the portal trying to figure out how to manipulate their foreign quadruped bodies? Or better yet, in a world full of magic, why does Sunset think that a small band of high school zombies will be enough of a military force to conquer Equestria, especially when you plan on crashing in on Celestia, Luna, and Cadence all at the same time? Number 8. Why is this in the fucking movie? This climax feels like it belongs in a completely different film. It contradicts the entire tone that's been established over the last hour and change. The entire point of this film, I thought, was to take the characters of My Little Pony out of a fantasy world full of monsters, magic, and mystery, and place them in a world that is a mirror to our own and show how they would interact with normal, everyday situations, like That was the whole point of the location swap? The entire tone of this film has been established as something purely slice of life. We established in the very beginning that magic doesn't work here. But then we take a complete 180 with this scene. If the climax of the film is going to be all about magic, sorcery, and magical girl anime references, why did we bother leaving the world full of magic, sorcery, and magical girl anime references in the first place? What is wrong with your face? So the main six fire off the rainbow cannon and defeat Sunset Shimmer instantly after being revealed, reverting her and Snips and Snails back to normal and breaking her hold on the student body. Twilight tells her that somehow her superpowers will no longer work in the human world and that she has revealed her true self to everyone. And then we get this bunk.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know there was another way.
Didn't know there was another way.
Didn't know there was another way? What the fuck is that supposed to mean? You're a student of Celestia. Of course you knew there was another way. The way she had been fucking teaching you that for some reason you didn't sign off on. Who in their right mind would buy such an obvious load of—
I don't know the first thing about friendship.
I bet they can teach you.
Are you fucking kidding me? We're really gonna accept this?
So we all apparently accept Sunset's apology. Spike makes a joke, and then Celestia gives Twilight her crown back whilst offering wisdom as Twilight bows before her. Twilight, she's a principal here, not a princess. That isn't necessary. So then Flash asks for that dance that Twilight owes her, and somehow everyone is okay with just resuming their everyday activities after watching a demon run amok, magic rainbow explosions, and seeing 6 of their classmates sprout wings and magical hair extensions. But alas, Twilight must return, so after a heartfelt farewell, she makes her way back through the portal to Equestria proper. A quick hands joke, followed by Spike wiggling his claws as if to clue us into how stupid it was, and this film is finally over. Or is it? Oh. They didn't.
We've got to stop bumping into each other like this.
Those bastards. So there you have it. Equestria Girls. This film clearly was not one of my favorites. It absolutely butchered its narrative and characterizations, and had little of the charm that made the series so enjoyable. The world was terribly trite, and overall it was a forgettable, grating experience that, despite the claims that the idea was sparked by seeing so many humanizations from the Brony fandom, was clearly greenlit for more typical corporate purposes. Add to the fact that the dolls have an eerily close resemblance to Monsters High, a similar franchise owned by Hasbro's biggest rival Mattel, and well, some of the dots just begin to connect. Hasbro needed an IP to compete with Mattel's biggest hit, and what easier way to jumpstart a new franchise than to spin it off an already successful one. A lot easier than building up something new from the ground up. Add to the fact that Equestria Girls could reel in more people to the MLP franchise in general, since we get a glimpse of Equestria proper in the movie, and it just seems like the right move. Then we see some guy named Mike Vogel on the DVD extras, credited as an executive producer, that has never really been talked about before, who apparently had his hands on a lot of the production, and whose commentary seems focused mainly on merchandising sales and expanding the franchise to as many different angles as possible, and one just has to wonder what was going on behind the scenes. I'll admit I don't have any answers, but I certainly have some questions. And there's one more thing I feel I need to say before I close this out. I did not hate this film because it was humanized ponies. I did not hate this film because it was set in high school. These issues would have been off-putting to me, sure, but I could have easily gotten over them if what was presented was an enjoyable flick. But it wasn't. I hated Equestria Girls because it was a bad film, for all the reasons I just stated. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, and probably already have said before even finishing watching this, is that I'm being too hard on this movie. That it's a film for kids, based on a TV show for kids, from a franchise for kids, to sell a line of dolls for kids, and that one should temper their judgments accordingly. The problem with this statement, especially from people who are otherwise fans of this franchise, is that you're promoting a double standard. This isn't just in respect to this movie, but to anyone who pulls this card in respect to Friendship is Magic in any sense. You cannot just cover up the show's weak points by claiming it's a show written for 5-year-olds, then simultaneously claim that there's stuff going on here that transcends the target demographic. These statements are incongruent and promote opposing mentalities. Pick a position. Friendship is Magic is either a show written for all ages, and thus should be interpreted and judged as one, Or is just for little girls, and little girls alone. Girls who apparently have no taste in good content according to you. And we're all fucking weirdos, and Fox was right all along. I choose to believe that My Little Pony is a show written for all ages, designed to appeal to everyone. Why? Because that's what Lauren and the rest of the DHX staff have been saying all along. My Little Pony is a well-written show that was made to appeal not just to children, but their parents, older siblings, and by extension, anyone who wants to enjoy quality animation, the same as any classic Disney film or latest Pixar creation. And do we pull our punches when talking about those films and franchises? No. And neither will I here. Fuck Equestria girls.